Yes, hello everyone. So my name is Elina Arponen, and I'm here to talk about instant games, or the new social games, games inside messaging, whatever you want to call this new sector. I have most knowledge about Facebook instant games that Joy was just presenting as well, but I will touch upon the other platforms in my presentation too. But first, a little bit about my own background. So I've been in the gaming industry for 15 years now, and I founded my first game startup in 2010. And back then, we were already making like social multiplayer games, but in a PC and Mac platforms. And we were kind of struggling how to go to mobile. And we realized 5 years ago that, hey, there's these messaging apps that have arrived, and we could put out games there. Obviously, 5 years ago was a bit early. The market wasn't so big back then. But we met with Palringo, and they were forerunner at the time, because they were already running a business with combining messaging and games, and they acquired our company. We spent 2 years building games exclusively for the Palringo platform. But then almost 3 years ago, we noticed that, hey, now things are starting to heat up. Facebook had just started their closed beta for the instant games, and we decided to found Quicksave. And since then, we've continued to focus on building for this messaging and social platform. So we've been on this like for 5 years now, which I dare to say is fairly long, comparing how new the market is. The market has been growing. We were anticipating that there will be more apps joining, and there has been. This is not a full list, but there's a lot of apps offering integrated HTML5 games within their app. And these messaging apps are still growing in their user bases, and they've grown beyond the kind of traditional social media. So there's growth in the user numbers, and a lot of people already there. One point I want to make in the very beginning is that these are quality games. I still get the question sometimes, so are you making like text adventures? And I'm like, okay, no. It doesn't mean that it's like text-based. It's HTML5, it's full screen. It's usually portrait, but you can do landscape. And HTML5 as a technology has evolved and matured a lot in the past 10 years. So you can do anything. You can do even 3D if you like. And you don't have to do hypercasual. You can have as much metagame and gameplay and everything as you want in your titles. Our own portfolio is also fairly wide in the range of genres. These are the ones I can mention. There's a couple of games I cannot talk about yet, but it's something that we've had a wide range of genres. We are working with partners. We are a small studio, so it's a win-win situation when you can combine forces with somebody who also wants to conquer this new platform. Okay, for the platform. So Facebook, that's the URL to find the games. And they used to be first in the Messenger, but probably you may not have that third tab in the Messenger anymore. So as Joy was presenting, just before me, there's the new gaming tab inside Facebook. And that's where you find the games now. And let's talk about the numbers, retention, virality, the interesting topics. So I do claim that the user acquisition and getting the users is easier and cheaper than in the App Store. And even though a lot of people don't know there's a gaming tab in Facebook, like if you haven't seen the gaming tab, you might not know it's there. But that's not the only way to get users. You also get users through friend referrals, so it's important to have something social in your game, and that social gameplay is a good way to acquire users. And also, if you do paid user acquisition, the funnel is really short. So from the ad, clicking the ad takes the player straight into your game. So that's a very quick and short funnel as well. But then the retention is harder. The same reason, like if the player doesn't know there's a gaming tab, if they come in from a friend post, they might know that there's a gaming tab and they can go and find your game again. But actually, when you are working on your user acquisition, you are at the same time working on your retention, because those same social touch points will bring the player back. And so that's how it's really important to have that social aspect in your game. And it's also important to use all the touch points that Joy was talking about, the APIs that the platform offers. But this is also probably the reason why like a lot of people have tried, like, let's take a game from App Store and just technically make it HTML5 game and try to see the numbers and if they will be the same. Well, they won't be the same. You need to start to think about how does that game, is it worthwhile porting over? Can it utilize these platform touch points? And if there's no way to integrate those touch points and the social aspects into your game, it will not do as well in here. And if you start to build a new game, start with the platform in mind. we are taking it as far as like thinking like, okay, messaging, so there's text, emojis, there's images, animated GIFs, videos, now there's games. So what do games bring into this social context in the discussion? What is the value the games bring that the users will be interested in? And so these two metrics are like really interlinked and work differently than in the App Store. So let's talk about certain key terminologies. So shareability is a key. OMG is kind of a quiz app, not even really a game. But the fact that they got 100 million users in less than a month is really interesting, because there is no mechanism in App Store to get this many users this quickly. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So having shareability is important. And what is important to realize is that this is all voluntary shareability. If you think of the old times, the previous era of like social games or Facebook games, it was a lot of forced sharing, like you cannot advance unless you get 5 apples from your friends. And it got pretty annoying pretty quickly. But this is all voluntary. But why are people in social media? It's because they want to share things and they want to interact and they want to comment. So they will share things from your game if the content is worthwhile sharing. Multiplayer is another aspect that is very well suited for this platform. And Ludo has done well, and Ludo is a board game with about 15-minute session time. So it's a good example that actually like you don't have to have like a super short session time. You can do long ones as well. But one thing I would advise about the multiplayer is that make it dynamic. Let the player play something alone as well. If you force them to invite friends, it's probably not going to work so well. There are exceptions to the rule, like Words with Friends and 8-Ball Pool are doing fine. But I rather think of them as the exceptions that make the rule. That if you have like a turn-based game that you cannot play until your friend has replied, I wouldn't start with that. Of course, multiplayer, you can do it with AI bots or like strangers. So like AI bots, you would think it feels like multiplayer, but even if it wasn't. So there's many ways to do it, and it's a good thing to do. Just think carefully how you do it. Then we have the game bots. A lot of developers think these are just like, okay, let's just do something. But I would recommend to use it because really use it as you can have like interactivity. These are basically the push notifications where the user has to opt in to get messages from the bot. But once they do, you can have much more happening there than in the mobile app store kind of type of push notification. You can have all kinds of quizzes and content there as well. Monetization, so there's video ads and there's in-app purchases. It depends a bit on the messaging app, like which one they emphasize more. Like some apps are more ad-based, some are more in-app purchase oriented, but usually all of the platforms kind of offer both of the options. Download size is important. And this is probably a reason why there's so many hyper-casual games on the market, because obviously it's easier to download your game very fast if it doesn't have that many graphical assets to begin with. But you can only download things in the beginning that you really need at the start, and of course you can download more while the user is playing. So this doesn't have to restrict you, but it is really important because it will affect how many people come into your game, and it will affect also the returning players. If they every time suffer from a long loading time, they might not go through the trouble of coming back to your game either. And of course the 5G networks are coming, and when they are out, this problem will be pretty much gone anyways. So there's a lot of different technologies to use. We are using Pixie, and we've done our own UI editor on top of Pixie. There are others like full game engines like Cocos, there's Phaser. It depends a bit on what type of game you are making, so you should study the engines a little bit. We found it most flexible to do our own editor on top of the Pixie one, and we use Spine for animations, and we've done our own backend with Amazon tools. So one of the most frustrating points on this market is the lack of market data. And I don't mean data about our own games. Like, we have Facebook analytics, we can have our own backend, so we can do any kind of data analysis we want for our own games. But because there's like no App Annie where you could go and check out, like, so who's the top crossing, what is the top crossing, what is what, there's very little kind of overall available data. The MAU numbers of the games, like in Facebook, are public, and the graphs I was showing for the two games are from this game Skyfall site, which seems to be correct data on the games. Although it's weird how their English spelling on the site is very terrible. Like, even in this screenshot you can see there's spelling mistakes. But that's one way to look at, like, so what games, how the MAU is evolving over time. But yeah, really looking forward to have like more data points on the market. Let's take a brief look on the other apps as well who are out there. So WeChat is the other one that's open for developers. And here as well, like, finding the game first time, you would usually find the game first time through friend referral or kind of searching for the game yourself, like typing the game's name. But then once you played it, it appears in your own, like, mini programs section. So finding it again is okay. They have video ads and purchases as well, and the purchases need those Chinese ISBN numbers, the same as in App Store. So any game doing purchases needs to have that register number in China. The web view is not pure HTML5, but they have support for most engines already, so that shouldn't be a big hassle technically. WeContact was one of the first ones after Facebook to start offering games. The games are currently available only on Android. They have their own virtual currency for monetization, and they curate a list of games that are available. Snapchat started last year. There's a talk after myself, so stay here if you want to hear more. I believe so. So it's very popular in the US. And yeah, they started last year. They are very focused on the kind of multiplayer aspect of the games. Then we have Line and Kakao. Line is the most popular one in Japan, and they are actively looking for original titles to have on their platform. KakaoTalk is the biggest one in Korea, but they do a lot of games internally, so they are not as actively looking for outside developers to do games with. But you can always reach out if you feel like that would be your platform. But with both Line and Kakao, it's harder to play the games here, like if you are in Europe, because the games work on the Japanese version of Line and the Korean language version of Kakao, so you can't just go and kind of very easily play them yourself. Then there's Twitch. Not everyone maybe has Twitch on the list, but I do. Twitch has a HTML5 layer on their streaming service, and they have their own virtual currency to minimize, to monetize. And so they have this mini app layer, and they can be games as well. So I think it's quite interesting because it's also a very social platform where people are interacting with each other already in the kind of Twitch chat as well. Then we have Viber, which is one of the newest to come on the list. They're strong in Eastern Europe, have following elsewhere as well, and they have this kind of games channel inside their app where the games are fairly easy to find. At least after you played something, you can easily find that game and other games on that kind of curated list as well. But that's not all, so there's still more. And even this list is not like having everything. There's also the handset manufacturers are having their own kind of HTML5 stores now. And Google Earth is kind of interesting. There's like a Cats Carmen San Diego that you can play on Google Earth. Obviously, that is not the most social platform to be in. So we are looking at the kind of, our company is first concentrating on the most social platforms where we can utilize that aspect inside the games. And the last one, I'm not sure if that even exists yet, but I'm presuming that with 5G networks coming up, there will be like even full operating systems where you don't have to download everything. So, as a recap, it's a huge market, it's still growing, there's already a lot of users on these apps. It's quality games, you can do whatever type of gameplay you want. It's not only hyper-casual, and you can utilize new social things to kind of help your design as well. The apps are still evolving. Some of them are like recently joined, so they are, and as we just saw from Facebook, there's still like a lot of new interesting features coming that the games can utilize. There's still new platforms also that will join the kind of list of apps offering this type of new social games. The KPIs work differently. Retention and virality are very interlinked. You need to spend some time to learn how does it work for your game and what metric is kind of affecting what. But there is the crazy shareability and viral potential if you know how to use that in your game design. Thank you. Not sure if I have a couple of minutes for questions.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to chuck one in the beginning. You've mentioned 5G a few times, and so I've always been a bit of a cynic with HTML5 in particular, not because I didn't think it was a great thing, but just because of adoption and getting quality content to a place that I can discover it has always been a challenge. But I seem to be getting the impression from what you're saying is we're kind of on the verge of that, 5G giving us the chance to get bigger, more rich content, but also there are now stores out there with significant audiences, particularly through social platforms. Are we at the tipping point?
Yeah, certainly we are. I mean, already now you can do quality content. Obviously, technically, you have to be a bit more savvy. And some of the tools out there are more towards like, making hyper-casual mini-games. So then now it's maybe a bit more struggle. But you know, as you said, like 5G and the tools evolving, it's happening. It's a matter of time when we will have like, you know, big titles there, and we will have kind of the we're still waiting for the kind of Super Mario moments that, you know, everyone will talk about a game and everyone will know a certain game, but it's coming.
Permission-based kind of problem when you're trying to deliver content into a small experience. You know, it's almost like streaming in some ways, where you were talking about earlier, like you don't have to download everything at once. And I kind of almost wonder whether the streaming platforms, particularly driven by 5G, is going to push that even further. Sorry, I'm taking down a particular rabbit hole. I shouldn't. Apologies for that. Any questions from sensible people? Yes. Let me get a microphone to you. Hang on.
Hi. Are the games usually exclusive to single platform, or do you support? Does it make sense to support multiple platforms at the same time?
You can support multiple platforms with one game. There's some platforms that are more picky on that. I believe, it might be my impression, but you know, Line wants it to be original, and I believe Snapchat also likes more original titles, so they shouldn't be elsewhere. Not so sure on so some titles might prefer they might take your game easier because most of them curate their list. So, but what means original? It could be a remake of the title you have elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that in theory it should be supportable, shouldn't it, regardless?
Yeah, technically it's doable. I mean, there are differences in the APIs, obviously, like the social APIs, like how do you send the share message, or even like Facebook has probably the most features that I know of, like it has very interesting APIs to use, so some platforms don't have that much to offer for the game, so then you would do less of the features, but so that there's some porting to do, but it's all HTML5.
We don't want to end up like Java, write once, run nowhere. Sorry, bad vibes from my history. On that note, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So.